All right, so we're all back here. All right, just wanted to break the videos up. So what I have right here is a couple different colors going on, and so let's go through a couple basics of Photoshop. So let me go ahead and snap this guy over here. Snapping is super handy for getting menus you frequently need over here. But let's go right down the tool set here first, all right? So this tool right here that I was working with, it's the marquee tool. In particular, I was using the rectangular marquee, which is going to let you select in an area that's rectangular or square if you hold down Shift. So you can switch it to whichever one you want by doing that. You can also hold down Alt, and I think it's Function key on Max, and you can deselect areas out of your selection with the same tool. You can hold down plus and add to your selection. And so if I come back and draw on any of these, I can get something that's selected like that. Keep in mind that you will very rarely be working at the pixel level when you're working on these documents. The next tool down here in the toolbar is going to be the polygonal lasso tool, and that's going to be the same ideas that you've as the marquee tool, except this one's going to be more of a click, 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 and then get back to the spot. And you can see that there's that little circle that appears right there next to the cursor. That's going to close off the selection, and then we can draw, and we will only draw mostly within that border. You can see that the blur that, or something I've got going on. No, I think it's just the angle is letting that creep out. So that's that tool. One that's similar to it is going to be the lasso tool, and this is a bit more freeform, so I'm just going to be able to randomly select things like that. And then same idea, you can draw within the boundaries of that space right there. Okay. So let's see. We have here the object selection tool. Let's not worry about that and go to the magic wand for now. So the magic wand, you can see right here, if I click, where I click, it's, let me get another color here so we actually have some variation. Okay, so we've got some blue there, we got some green here. And so if I was to take the magic wand tool here, and again, that's that third one down, W is a fancy shortcut for it. If I click on this, you can see that it highlights that whole area where it is. If I click in the white, it's going to highlight a certain percentage of this. That that's what's called the tolerance, and you can see that's got a setting right here at the top. So if I change this tolerance to 1, it's going to be very kind of, did I change it? Point sample. It should be a little bit tighter than that. Okay. Doesn't help that I'm doing those kind of things, I guess. Let me get a space like this. I think the blurs are kind of screwing it up. So, alright, so if I was to do the selection in here, you can see that as I change the tolerance, it's going to alter a little bit. I guess it doesn't work as well at this tiny scale because, again, I'm working in a tiny corner of this project. And then you can uncheck contiguous too. So if I select this green area over here, it's going to select that green area over here. If I select the red here, it's going to select all these red areas. Now, once I have those selected, I can switch back to the move tool, now that I have something to move, and I can actually click and move this over here. Once I'm done moving it, I can click away, and then go back to selecting this, and I can move those around. All right, so magic wand tool is pretty helpful for, and we're actually going to use it later, it's helpful for kind of isolating sections of an image. This is kind of not a great example for that. The crop tool is going to be something we don't have, we'll wait till we get an image in here, and I should come back and do that. The eyedropper is the next one I use a lot of, and that's just kind of going in here and selecting a color if I want to replicate it. One of the nice, obvious, fancy things that it's doing in the newer versions is going to be showing me what my previous color was on the bottom there, and then you can see as I move over things, it's showing me what the new color that I'm going to be using is going to be if I let go at that point. All right. let's see. Excuse me. All right. Let me jump ahead to the brush tool here. And the brush tool is going to be something that I use a lot of in here. And that's just kind of how I've been trained in it. So the brush tool is going to have a whole bunch of settings here. Let me close the history and bring up brushes. So you've got a whole bunch of brushes here. I believe that's a toolkit I downloaded from Dave Greco. Dave Greco Art. Okay, right. And this has a couple really fun tools or different brushes in here. So if I select this and then we'll switch back out here, you can see that it's got a kind of blood spattery thing. That's going to put well, I guess it's partly because of the color I have selected. And so you can create all kinds of drawings with these different things here. These aren't too handy for what we're going to be using them for. More realistically, what you'll be doing is going into the brush settings here. And I would highly recommend just taking some time to play around with these settings. But again, it's not something that we do necessarily in the class often, but it can help you kind of create art to throw together in a project. So there are different things, like if I click on shape dynamics here, actually let's increase scatter so you can see what's going on first. So down here it's showing kind of a preview. And then let me get scattering count. No, that's as low as that goes. Okay. So back up to shape dynamics, size jitter is going to change, sort of randomize the size difference between different things. So let me get a different color here, or just go black. So see how those aren't all uniform sizes. If I kind of spray that around, you can see that this one is kind of twice the, well, not twice the size, but noticeably larger. So size jitters for that, whereas if you keep it at 0%, it's going to be, actually we can change this right here for the size jitter. Minimum diameter, there we go. So then now we've got a whole bunch of different random sizes going through. So there's really small ones there. And then I think the biggest one is going to be a little bit bigger, or about the same size. And same thing with the angle jitter. So right now it's set to 100%, but if we crank this all the way back, they're all going to be facing the same size. Roundness jitter, so that's going to kind of squish them a little bit. And again, you have a minimum roundness just like you have minimum diameter. We'll turn off shape dynamics and go to scattering real quick. So right here you can see that we've got a whole bunch of these, whatever they are. We can really crank that count up and randomize the count just like we could with other things. And then kind of spray that around. It kind of slows my computer down. Let me get a different brush so we can see what's going on here better. So, oh, that's fun. Let's see. I'll have to turn everything black here real quick. So, switch to white, and you can see that there's kind of a texture going on with this one. Let me switch back. I'm going to just go to a normal brush. Brushes. Back up. General brushes. So these are going to be the ones you guys are more used to. So let me just go with this default right here. Crank that size way down. And so there's your kind of standard brush. If I turn on the scattering, both axes, you can see that it kind of creates this little splat where it's, because the way Photoshop actually draws it is it doesn't draw, this isn't an actual brush that's continuously drawing. It's actually drawing a whole bunch of little dots as you move the mouse around. So turning on these scatter effects is actually going to scatter those dots as you click and drag. All right. So your count jitter is going to be something where, let me turn this down. As I drag here, you can see that it slightly changes. Let me go to the side here. And if I do that, you can see the count kind of varies a little bit. Not too crazy with that one though. Let's turn scattering off. Texture was one of the other ones, so if I turn texture on, we probably aren't going to see this. Let me switch to a black. No. Contrast. Texture each tip. Yeah, this is going to be a hard one to see. Alright, we won't worry about texture. This is a bad brush, and I'm not going to keep jumping around on brushes on you guys. So, dual brush is kind of nice because you can set a secondary brush that you can also work with. So if I choose this, let's see, multiply. So there's now a secondary brush that's being applied as with this filter right here. It has its uses, but again, kind of like a lot of these other tools, they're going to be pretty specific. Color dynamics is one where I do use a lot of that. So if I actually, and I'll kind of show you guys what's going on here in a minute too. I do want to cover that. No, go back. Cover this box right here. So color dynamics is fun because you can make sure you check the apply per tip and do a foreground background jitter. What this is going to do is it's going to change the brushes, so you can see as I drag, it's going to alternate between that green and the black, or the blue and the black that I have right here. And then I can do things like hue jitter. So instead of sticking with the standard one, it's going to go crazy like that. If I bring that back, it's going to be not as crazy. If I do saturation jitter, same idea. It's going to make it more or less saturated. Brightness jitter, I'm not going to see much with that. And then purity, actually let's take purity way down. So you can do all kinds of different things with this set of brush tools. So again, if I was to now go and take this and we'll go to our brushes, we'll go back to one of these, and then, oh, boo. Okay, we'll just go back to our original brush we were at. So, yeah. You can do some things with these. Again, they have limited uses though. Same thing with transfer. So opacity jitter, you can see that as I drag it, it kind of does different things as you go. And again, here's what I was talking about, where Photoshop doesn't draw a single continuous line. It takes samples as you draw the mouse along the screen. So you can see right there as I move, it draws another circle kind of where the mouse is. So that's how Photoshop is drawing these circles. And again, it all relates to pixels. So as I zoom in, you can see here individual pixels. Each of these, let's go bring back up the info here, is going to have, each one is going to have its own individual value here. Though these are mostly going to be pretty similar because they're kind of all drawn the same. So let me zoom back out. Here's my modern artwork. Let's go back in here. Couple more to go through. Actually, not really. I rarely use noise. I don't think it's a great one to use, and it's probably not going to show up this well. Wet edges is one. It kind of leaves that nice stain effect right there. You can do some cool things with that, especially when combined with some scattering and shape, and color dynamics. So if I had a decent option to scroll through with this. All right, anyway. So you can do some interesting things with the wet edges. And then I always like to keep smoothing on, and again, that's just a personal preference. There's no real difference you can see there. I think it's a very rare edge case where you would use that. So those are the brushes. They're pretty cool. They have their uses. Along with it, you have a couple other options here for the pencil tool, but again, the pencil tool is just kind of like a default, like single pixel brush. Rarely will you use that. And that's kind of all I would recommend going through that. Clone stamp tool is nice. What you can do is find an area in your drawing, hold down Alt, and then as you start drawing over here, it's going to transfer that over, right? This is useful if you need to touch up certain things in your drawing. So let's say I want to grab this, and we're going to have another one of these going on. Again, this is kind of just a scratch paper, so I'll show you how that's applied later. But we will be covering the clone stamp. Eraser tool. The eraser tool is basically a reverse brush, all right? So yes, I can erase like that, but I can also come in here and you see how the brush settings didn't go away when I switched? So one of the cool things you can do is, let's see, let's do scattering, scatter. So I can erase in a pattern like that. And, oh, hold on. What did I need? Okay, so I actually want to get rid of the background here. So I will, oh, not new, I want a new layer. Okay, so, oh, right, I'm in a web document. We'll cycle back to that later. Okay. I'm in a web document, so I can't get the transparent background unless... I don't think I can. I'm not seeing it. Tolerance. No, it's not letting me erase the background. All right, I'll get to that in the next video. So a couple other things here. Gradient tool. This is kind of useful if you want to just kind of wipe everything out like that. Or you can come back with your marquees and throw in a gradient like that within the marquee. Oh, and these right here that I drew in earlier in the demo that I haven't mentioned, these are rulers. On Windows, you can do Control R to bring them up. Otherwise, you're going to find them here under the View menu as rulers to turn them on, and then you can move them into the screen here. If you have them out, you can just kind of release them. You can also hold down Shift and they will snap to different spots. So you can see I can slowly drag it across, or I can make it hold down Shift. Another option is if you have an area selected, they should snap to that. So see right there, I get close and it just snaps right in there. So if you are working with something where it's like, hey, I wanted to get, oh, and now I can do this. Let me turn this to contiguous. So if I wanted to reselect this area where I drew this, I can turn my tolerance up here. And so if I click there, and because you see if I do it too different, it's gonna not join like that. So I can kind of slowly do additional clicks through here, and now I can come in and, oh, it's gonna have a couple jump offs there. I can smooth this edge up. Oops, nope. Oh well. All right, not important. So you can go back and if there is something specific that is at least rectangular or close to rectangular in shape, you can do that. To reselect those things again with the rulers and the marquees. Paint bucket tool is going to be nice to just kind of, it'll fill in whatever area is consistent. Just it's kind of like a drop, just like the magic wand tool was, where it's only going to affect a certain limited area. Sharpen tool has its uses. This will be something we'll do in a bit too, but you can see how it's going to kind of distort those in a little bit, but in certain images it'll kind of make it appear sharper in that area. Now again, you can see that it distorts the image and kind of changes it. That's not always intentional, and sometimes you want to stay away from that. All the same, you've got the smudge tool, which is going to do that. That's actually pretty strong. So if I want to smudge that a little bit, if I wanted to blur it, let's go to something, so you can blur things like that. So there are these different tools for actually manipulating photos. Dodge tools is going to apply a similar effect, but it's going to kind of just change your saturation. That's probably not the right word to say, but we're going to go with it. Burn is going to kind of darken things a little bit. And then your sponge is going to kind of just going to smooth stuff over a little bit. What's the flow on that? Cranked up mode, saturate, there we go. So again, different tools that can kind of affect different spots on the image. And again, these are all working by editing directly on the individual pixels. So as I drag this over a certain area, you can see that it's only affecting the area where I drag it, and it's just affecting those pixels. There's nothing else in this drawing because I haven't done anything with layers. I'm going to say avoid the pen tool completely in Photoshop. I'm going to say avoid it because it's in Illustrator and it's way better in Illustrator. So we'll cover this actually in Illustrator where it's more functional. The type tool is going to be kind of your standard text tool. So you can just click out there, start typing. Let me change this to something we can see. And, oh boy. And then we have some of the standard font tools up here, which we will cover in a little bit as well. Next we have the selection tool, and for this one we have the direct selection tool, the path selection tool. I usually just hit V on the keyboard, which is going to bring up the move tool for V, and then A for the selection. So I can jump around between, and obviously again, well actually we can select this now. So if I have V out, V is going to auto select because I have this box right here checked. It's going to show transform controls. If you don't have either of those checked, you might want to turn them on now. So if I hit V, I can select the background here, or I can select that. If I hit A, it's going to change to this tool right here. And now if I try to change to one of these things, it's not going to work, right? So, come on. Alright, there we go. So if you change it to the direct selection tool, it should not. Oh, I need an object. Never mind. Okay. We'll move on and we'll get back to that. Or is it just freezing out on me? Okay. Oh, there it goes. Okay. It caught up. Alright. Okay, so let me try that again. Okay, it's freezing my program. I'm going to move on because it's just kind of being weird. There are a couple of these different tools you can use to create generic shapes, but again, if you're creating generic shapes, you should probably be doing them in Illustrator, so I would say stay away from that. Boy, this is running slow. And then you have the hand tool. That's going to be your pan. So if I switch to H, I can pan around the screen. That's not what I'm doing. I'm holding down spacebar while I work, and that's going to automatically switch to the pan tool so that you can move around. All right. Another thing to help you move around is going to be I hold down Alt on the keyboard and then roll the mouse wheel, and I can zoom in and out. All right. So between those two tools, I can very quickly go from very far zoomed in here, Alt and mouse wheel to zoom out, spacebar and click to drag, and then Alt and zoom back in here, so I can quickly kind of get wherever I need. Oops, and I just copied a layer. There we go. All right, so let me throw another layer on top here, and we'll fill that with a gradient, and we can show you, excuse me, and let's clear out these rulers. So under View, Clear Guides. So one of the last things that kind of I would highly recommend you take the time to learn is going to be this right here. So if I hit D, it's going to default my foreground to this black and the white in the background, and then I can hit X, which is this little thing right here. So I can do X on the keyboard to switch between those at any point in time. So if you really quickly want to get back to just the default colors, go ahead and hit D and then X to switch, and then from here you can change the two to work with. Keep that in mind because we're going to be using a very similar thing in Adobe Illustrator next. Alright, so let me actually get an image in here that we can work with because I also want to get a proper transparent background. So I'm going to drag in a picture of my cute puppy. Where'd she go? Loading. There we go. Alright, so there's my cute puppy. Is that you? No, it's the other one. Alright, so, oops. So let's get some of these tools using here in an actual image, alright? So I have the magic wand tool. We're doing 3x3 average, tolerance of 15. So you can see that I can select a small area of the blanket, but because this image has kind of a high contrast of colors, I could probably turn this up to about 60, and then try again, and let's go a little bit higher. Let's try something like 80. And you can see that I can, no, I'll have to do a couple different ones. And that's not going to quite work, so if I bring it back down to 60, still not quite working for me, alright? So it does have its uses, but only if you're kind of select a very specific part of the image. Oh, I dragged it in twice. Well, let me delete this one. Okay, so background. So if you are, this was an image that I dragged in here, so it doesn't have that restriction of the web document that I was working with before. So if I double click on this background, see how it has that little lock symbol right there? If I double click on this, it's going to give me new layer. If I hit OK and then start erasing, you'll see that background checker right there. And that's indicating that there's transparency. So if I was to actually take this and use it in a web document, you would actually see transparency there, which is something that you guys will definitely need to focus on for your milestone this week. Alright, let me undo that. So, I have this puppy here. Let's say that we just want to capture just her head, and we want to turn this blanket blue instead of green. So how would we go about that? So we're going to use the magic wand tool, and I'm going to take this down to 40, and I'm going to do a couple selects here, and I'm not going to worry if I go over. I'm not too concerned about that, because we're going to have another step that we'll do here, and that's kind of close enough. That's good enough for what I'm trying to do. So the next big tool I want to show you guys is this one right here that's under these, and it's the magic, or it's the mask mode. And so if you hit Q on your keyboard or just click on that button, you're going to see this area where it's going to be red and then the actual color that you're working with. And so what I can do in this mode is I can actually come in here and not draw with a ridiculous pen. Let me go back to a generic brush here. So we'll get that. And actually we want to erase because we want to erase areas we're working with. And so I need to switch this back to the eraser tool, which is also on a ridiculous option here. Okay, so what this is doing is this is you drawing a selection area, alright? So as I erase these red areas right here, you can see that it's kind of clearing them out. And let me go right there. And again, I'm going to kind of bounce between overdrawing and underdrawing here. That's just kind of how I do it. So I want to get certain areas clear here. And then once I'm done, I'm going to come back with the brush tool and I'm going to fill them in. So I'm going to draw in here. And another thing that's useful is if I draw to this point right here, took my mouse off, or my finger off the mouse, I'm going to hold down Shift and I'm going to click. And as I do that, it's going to draw a straight line from the last place I clicked to the next place I clicked. And so that's going to let me quickly kind of rough out, excuse me. Dogs, man. Alright, so, where are we? We're still drawing in a little nose right here. And I think this is actually her forehead. So then we can fill this area in real quick. And why don't I just... Actually, let's keep going. I'm almost done here. So I'm just kind of tracing these areas around here where the selection's going to be. And then I kind of went over a little bit right there, which is fine because I can always just come back, switch to the eraser, and just kind of knock that area out. And then again, brush tool, and right there. Okay. Oh, we got to do the other side here. And then this is an area where, because of that little dip right there, I'm just going to color into that, and then I'll come back with the eraser in a second and clean it up. So I'm just trying to get this as close back to the original. Yeah, I'll just be lazy and kind of do that. And then, again, come back with an eraser. I don't like it when it does that. Oops, undo that. Nope. Sorry, don't like dead air, but I'm trying to just burn through this part. Okay, so I missed it a little bit there. That's probably good enough for demo. Alright, so we've got the green blanket selected here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to click back to the select mask, or the quick mask option right there. And so now we've got this area here with the dog highlighted, or actually with the blanket highlighted. And then I can now go up to the adjustments area here. And for this, we're actually going to use a hue saturation. And let's pull this in here. And so now I can go through and I can change the color of this blanket. So let's say instead now it's blue. Okay. And then you can see right there, because of that kind of lazy selection I did right there, it's going to do that. So there are things I could have done to fix that. I could have gone and gotten a different brush. But again, I'm trying to keep this under 40 minutes for this demo. So there are different ways that you can do that. Once I've deselected that area, actually so I do have this area selected right now. Another thing that's nice is you can go to select here and select the inverse. So now I have everything that wasn't in that selection selected. And now I can do other weird things here too. So am I on RGB? Yeah, okay. So I can go in and do different that looks terrible. So I can do different filters on areas that are selected. Or I could just grab that chunk right there. Or I could do, hey, let's pixelate. So I could just mask a certain area off to apply a filter like that too. So there are different steps that you can take within Photoshop here. But again, the purpose of Photoshop is that you're going to be editing an individual image. All right, Photoshop is a very narrow task. So when you're working with it, you're working with one image at a time. There are other programs that we're going to go into next. Illustrator, for example, can hold multiple images, but you can't really edit them. You can only apply filters like this to them. And then InDesign is really more set up for setting up a large multi-page document where you wouldn't be editing images at all. So think about that as sort of a three-step process of you edit the image, you edit individual images in Photoshop, you put those in to create say a business card in Illustrator, and then you're going to put that business card into InDesign for your final mock-up of what you're presenting to a client. All right, that's kind of how that workflow works. So that's why it is important that you know all three of these programs and the sort of idiosyncrasies of how they all work. All right. Let me undo that. Couple other things before we close this out. There are a couple settings here. So there's the levels. Try to watch out for anything that goes right up to the edge and has one of these long flat lines here. So if I drag this over, you can see it's going to kind of brighten the image up. Actually, let me take it back so that we're not... and this is the history menu that I've been jumping to. You can change how many steps you get back, so I can go a certain distance back, or I can click on the original image and go all the way back. And I just want to kind of do some color editing on this image, which is something I would highly recommend doing for a lot of things. Yeah, we are RGB. Okay, so levels is one that's really good to use. And so if you see something like a really high peak here at one end or a really flat curve there, You can usually brighten the image up and get a better color balance just by going a little bit up to or on the other side of where that meets right there, or dragging that in. It'll give you a little bit deeper blacks in certain areas. Um, and then sometimes you can shift this around and kind of get a better overall color balance. So now if I apply that, I can jump back to here, and it's debatable which one's kind of the better image. I do think this is nicer because it shows a little bit better contrast um, around the nose area there. Other things you can do is the curves, and there's what's the really quick, easy way to do curves is just kind of click in the center here, and then bring that up a little tiny bit, bring that down a little tiny bit, and you can see you get kind of like it's a little bit blown out. Um, and probably because I already did the other one. But this is what's called a standard S curve, and it's just kind of this S shape. And that kind of brightens up a lot of images, no matter what you're working with. So let's just step it back. So curves, levels, and then the original. So you can see it gets brighter, and at least in my opinion, a little bit better. Not that this was a great image to begin with, but it was handy. A couple other things, image size. So this is there's a small image that I'm working with here. So if I bump this up to say 900 pixels, all this is going to do is it's going to create new data. This isn't going to help you actually make the image a higher quality. So make sure you always start with that highest quality image you've got when you begin with. And that way, the only thing you can do is lose image information, because as I expanded this, you can see that now it's kind of got all these weird textures in here that weren't there before. Not necessarily, they sort of were, I guess, because it's a JPEG. But when you just do sort of a blanket scale up, oops, not with that, with that, it's just going to create new data, all right? And that data isn't necessarily going to be better, it's just more. So again, always start with the largest image you can and then work your way down to a proper size. Oops, and then I did the wrong one again. Canvas size. So canvas size is great if you want to specifically do alter the size of the canvas. So if I wanted to change the width of this to 200%, oops, 200, what that's going to do is it's going to add on the sides of the images an extra 50%. If I was going to do canvas size, and then I can click right there, do 200%, it's going to add it over here on the side. So if you need to add area to your canvas to work on, that's how you would do that. You can do also individual pixel numbers. So if I wanted to bump this up to be exactly 1024 by, and then we'll do 768 to crop it down a little bit. And it's going to give me this warning because I'm actually cutting pixels off in this. So I'll leave back open. So you can see right there, it just kind of shrunk it down, but also made it wider. Let me jump back to the original image. Another way I could have done that is I could have done a selection and then done image crop, which is going to crop to my selection, which is again this crop tool right here that I kind of jumped over earlier in the drawing or in the video. And then there was something else I wanted to show for canvas size. Oh, right. So if you have a selection going on here with like the polygonal lasso tool, so if that's my selection area with one of these ones, it's actually going to crop it down to the border of that in a square fashion. So I have this area selected, but it's not going to limit me to just that. It's going to kind of go, what's the X, Y, min, max that's going on here. So keep that in mind when you do selections like that with a crop. And then, but if you do a selection like that, you can with the standard marquee tool, one of the things that I was using earlier, was this style drop down. So normally you can just kind of do whatever you want with it and it'll pick a size and what have you. What is handy sometimes is being able to change this to a fixed ratio. So if I always want it to be 1:1, or if I want to scale it to a 1024, oops, oh right, okay, let's do a 4:3. So if I want it to be 4:3 ratio for a newer or for a standard kind of screen, I could do something like that and then crop it. Or something that I've found myself doing a little bit more often is if I know I have a very specific size that I'm trying to work it down to, then I will do something like 124 or 123, 123. So anywhere I click in this now, it's going to be 123 by 123 pixel square, right? And if I change this number to 223, then we're going to have a slightly taller one. So those are kind of the basics of Photoshop, and then next video I'm going to get into your milestone for this week.